from Meredith Van Dyne, our host at Southern District, who arranges the platform here. And Meredith, very good. So I think the way this is going to work is Andy will come on with a little bit of intro, and then I'm going to give a little bit more intro, and then we'll kind of start in with the Q&A there. I'm kind of expecting Andy to pop on soon. If you haven't met Andy, I hope you do at some point. He's our esteemed producer here, and he's been awesome getting this thing set up. I think he's got a good long career of transportation ahead of him, but if that doesn't work, producing multimedia presentations definitely could work for him.
Isn't it amazing how many people have stepped up and become our geek squad, become experts in different areas like this? It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Well, we need it when we asked it, but then yes, people did step up, and good talent out there when we need it and when we ask. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, what are we looking like here?
So right now we have about 65 folks.
Okay.
I think maybe give it another minute or two and then we'll get started.
Okay. Always that fine line. Don't want to wait too long and then people start to drift away maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got most of the folks who've registered.
Okay. Julie, one more note about Michigan, though. I got together with my brother yesterday. He's, obviously from up there as well. And we were plotting trips back up to Michigan. We're going to vacation on Lake Michigan and another trip back to Detroit to see a Tigers game at some point. And, that's, we're having fun just daydreaming what our future trips might look like back up there.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We haven't seen my mother-in-law and father-in-law in well over a year.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't feel safe, driving that far and, the stops you have to do and such. So we're trying to figure out exactly when our first quick one can be. We're so anxious to get up there. And then when could a longer trip be when we could really spend a little more quality time with them? I'm just so excited. To get to hug them and sit and chat,
Yeah. Well, trip up to Michigan though, you got to make it in the not in the winter, right? There's
right.
That too. It's wait too long because then the snow hits.
Well, and that's why it's been over a year, right? So we hadn't gone in January or February.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do that.
Are y'all ready to start?
Let's roll, Andy.
Excellent. Switch my camera back over. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our second installment of the Conversations in Transportation series. I'll be kicking it over to Dr. Hummer here in a brief second, but one general announcement. We always have people always asking about PDH forms and valuations after. If you registered beforehand, you got the link that way, you will receive another email after sometime later this afternoon with a link to download the evaluation in PDH form. If you don't receive that, please contact me directly. My email should be on the closing slide at the end, but please feel free to reach out if you have any issues with that. And that being said, here is Dr. Hummer.
Okay,
all right, all yours.
Yep, good. Thank you. And welcome everybody to our second installment of Conversations in Transportation, brought to you by North Carolina Section ITE. We're delighted today to have Julie White with us, Deputy Secretary of NCDOT. Better introduction of Julie in a minute, but I did have a couple of other things before we get to that introduction. Reminder that the purpose of this series is to educate our members and friends out there through conversations with transportation industry leaders. We're looking to talk with interesting people about their careers, about hot topics and good ideas, and we're looking for leaders and entrepreneurs and people really at the top of the profession, and conversations that would be interesting to all ages and all job titles, from students on up to retirees. So that's what we're aiming for here, and glad you're with us today to help make that possible. Speaking of which, thanks to our Nixite Diamond and Gold sponsor companies who are making this series possible. And we really appreciate that. And for that matter, making it possible for us to offer this for free today. So the title slide was showing you some of those companies. We really appreciate their support. And when you get a chance to thank those companies, please don't miss the opportunity. Type your questions into the chat box as we go along. We've got time for a question and answer toward the end of the hour. Andy will be sort of moderating that, and we'll give Julie and I the good questions that come in. So please don't hesitate to get your questions in there.
Dr. Harmon,
and one more note before, I'm sorry.
We want to make sure everybody uses the Q&A function for the questions. That way it keeps them all organized for us. So put your questions in the Q&A box.
Very good. Yep. Thanks, Andy. And then one more note before we get with Julie, and that's I did want to note the passing of Fred Rosendahl a couple of weeks ago. He was a former president of the North Carolina Section ITE, passed away on February 7th after a period of declining health. 33-year veteran of NCDOT, 1987 Nixite president. And I think maybe the pioneer of highway safety in North Carolina. I don't think there was anybody more committed or more vocal about keeping North Carolina roads safe than Fred. And if you knew him, you knew his commanding presence, a fierce passion, a great energy. And, I guess, Julie, if my questions start to sound a little tough, I'm inspired by Fred today, thinking of how he would have conducted a conversation like this. We miss him, and wanted to note his passing, but his legacy sure lives on in many different ways around North Carolina. So, okay. Thanks again, Julie, for joining us. Julie White, Deputy Secretary for Multimodal Transportation. Julie oversees the high-level operations of the, let me see if I can list all these. It's a pretty incredible list. Rail Division of Aviation, Ferry Division, and Integrated Mobility Division. And in turn, that includes transit and bicyclists and pedestrians. Did I miss anybody, Julie? Is that?
You got them.
We were chatting before you got on about the problem of golf carts on the roads these days, and wondering if we could, if that fell within your realm as well. It's pretty amazing list. So.
Well, Joe, anytime I discover any new mode of transportation, I do attempt to claim it. So.
and that seems a good strategy. So yes, when the flying scooters get here, you will be in charge. Yes.
I'll be going, it's mine.
So, first question is, how do you keep track of? I think that's at least 7 different modes there. How do you do it?
I think is the most fun thing about my job is that each mode is really unique and distinct. And so I get to do really different kinds of work, minute to minute, hour to hour, in my job. There are ways that state DOTs organize different modes. And I think the way that we've done it, putting these things together, offers some opportunities for synergies, like when we do budgeting, right? That's very uniform across the agency and such. But it's when I get to bring together 2 unexpected modes that I think offers some really interesting opportunities. Like we're talking about how do we do a better job with last mile connections of bike and ped and transit with our ferry system. You know, how do we bring together our rail system and passenger rail with integrated mobility as we think about, you know, the last mile, about transit oriented development, about walkability. And so that's some of my favorite parts, is that I sit in the unique position to get to look across those modes and find those opportunities to bring them together. But I enjoy a job where I do something different minute to minute, hour to hour. So it really makes it fun, a lot of fun for me.
Very good, very good. I think that shows through. Any idea sort of how many employees in these different divisions that you know fall into your realm?
Yeah, so we have a total across those modes of about 610 permanent full-time employees. The bulk of them, over 400, are in our ferry division. We have about 400 permanent, give or take a few, and about 100 temporaries that we hire up, you know, in season. We have about 30 in aviation, about 38 in integrated mobility, and about 47 in rail. But Joe, as you know, also so much of what we do at the DOT is that we have consultants who are actually doing, you know, a lot of the yeoman's work. So our folks manage, of course, large numbers of consultants and projects in addition to that.
Very good, good. A couple of years ago, some of our members remember that you were musing about reorganizing the various kind of silo units into formally forming mixed mode strategies. Any progress in that? Is that still going to happen, or where does that stand?
So it was, you know, a couple of things that really created the kismet for me to start thinking about this. One was, and since you work at headquarters downtown at the state capitol, Joe, you will remember it as well. I refer to it as the day the birds landed in downtown Raleigh. The day we all woke up, and there they were, scooters all over downtown Raleigh, right? And we're sitting at our windows looking out on downtown street, seeing them whizzing by on sidewalks, on streets, going the wrong way down one-way roads. And suddenly it was like, okay, there's a new mode. And as I do, I went, it's mine. And I claimed it. And I started to think about, where does it fit and who is going to be responsible for it in the organization? And then, you know, then we saw the guy with the motorized skateboard. There was the guy that we all knew in downtown, and now they're everywhere as well. Modes are changing so rapidly, and new types of modes are coming out so rapidly that we really needed to position ourselves as a DOT, to never be surprised again, right? We should always know what's coming and be prepared for it. We should also understand how it fits into our system. And then in addition to that, I had sort of one of those moments where I was sitting at a stoplight in my car, and I was watching a mother disembark a public transit bus. And she had her toddler, you know, coming with her down the stairs in one hand, and she was trying to carry her stroller in the other hand. And, you know, that's something that lots of parents have been through. You know, managing toddlers and strollers can be challenging. And watching her step down off the bus into a bus stop that was just a sign. There was no sidewalk, it was just mud. And then she needed to cross the street to the apartment complex across the street. And she opted to cross right there, right? The crosswalk in touch was way up, you know, yards and yards and yards in either direction. And the most efficient route was straight across. And it was a 4-lane, 45-mile-an-hour road. So a really unsafe crossing. And it got me thinking about how at the time we had the bike and ped division, which was thinking about those pedestrian trips and those bicycle trips and planning where we put sidewalks. And then we have a public transit division, and they were planning where we put stops. And that those two things really needed to happen together, because every public transit journey starts and ends with a pedestrian trip. We have to walk to the bus and walk away from the bus. So needing to bring those planning functions together. And that's what really came up with, that's how we came up with the idea of the integrated mobility division. We needed a spot where all of this multimodal planning was happening together with planners who understood how they both all function, And that is where new mobility would live as well, whatever that next new mode was. All these things needed to play together into a seamless trip plan. And that's how we came up with the concept. We are wrapping up the tail end of that merger. It is the Integrated Mobility Division. We have posted, I think we have probably 7 or 8 postings probably live right now for multimodal planners, for section chiefs, for a director for integrated mobility. So finishing staffing the unit with the positions recreated in a multimodal way, and launching a whole new branch in that shop called Innovations and Data. So we know that we have a ton of data around everything we do at the DoD, but how are we using it? We really needed some good thoughts around how we manage our data and how we use our data to solve problems. And then I am really big on the idea of pilots. As mobility is changing, we need to try new things that are coming and either fail quickly or succeed. And if we succeed, then roll them out statewide. So we created a whole new branch around doing those two things as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Good. Good. So that yeah, sounds like it's well underway, and we look forward to the work of those new branches out into the future. Let me talk a little bit about some of the specific modes then, and get your thoughts on some of these specifics. Pedestrian bicycle business has been great during COVID, right? I mean, volumes are way up. Do you think those volumes will stay up after COVID has departed?
So we are seeing really interesting data around this. This is part of sort of watching the data. Commuting trips are down that people were doing by pedestrian bicycling, but recreational trips are up considerably. I'm sure everyone has experienced the full streets that people are walking on. I've gotten to know more of my neighbors than ever before when we're all out walking, our kids, our dogs, ourselves. So we're all seeing it, and the data is showing it as well. The shared use paths are greenways, usage is up there as well. Residential sidewalks up as well. We expect our recreational volumes will remain higher as people have rediscovered all of the amazing places that you can go and walk and bike. And I also think the timing of it with the introduction of electric vehicles, electric bikes, has been really interesting. I myself have an electric bike, which has allowed me to travel much further on my bike than ever before. So I think the combination of those two things means that we're going to see these trends continue into the reopening of our new normal.
Great. Hope so. So how is NCDOT trying to help that along then? Get a couple initiatives to lead that?
Well, we're doing a couple of things. One is we have some research projects monitoring the data. So we've got counters out there, taking a look at what we're seeing. We're also really excited about our new complete streets policy update, where we have highway projects that are taking place. It's important to plan for all of the users of the space. So, having facilities for biking and walking is really at its core about safety. That we are all safer when people have their own dedicated space where they're meant to be. So where appropriate in the context of the design of the community, having the sidewalks, the bike lanes planned for in the road project, I think will help us all be able to continue these trends because we'll feel safe about where we can go to bike and walk. I myself, am most comfortable on a greenway. I am not, I'm not the strongest bicyclist in the world, and I'm very risk adverse. So that is where I am most comfortable. The more spaces we can create where people feel comfort, the more they will embrace the mode.
Good. My son is a big proponent of the Mountains to Sea Trail. He loves it. He's out there on our little section of it practically every day. So do we have a big role in that one and the East Coast Greenway and a couple of these other big name brand trails? Is that an NCDOT thing, or who does those?
So, each of those are built out segment by segment. So we can play a role when local communities are working on those segments. We have some federal funding that can be of assistance in building those out. We have bicycle grant programs where we can help do bike plans that can help envision what those corridors might look like. And we launched a new program about a year and a half ago, Rails to Trails program, where we put out a call for projects and we're able to fund 3 projects with some federal funding we had. So we have a number of ways for segment by segment that we can help support communities building out those examples or other projects similar in their communities.
Good, good. Hope so. I think that really helps our image as a state and the tourist industry too, to show,
Yes. So one of my favorite stories I've heard a division engineer tell me is about the role that bike paths can play in our coastal communities. He told me when I first came to the job, he was telling me about the Emerald Isle bike path. I think it's about 11 miles out there. And he said, the mayor is like a god in this community because he said, people love that trail so much. He said, tourists will choose Emerald Isle to vacation because of that bike path. They will bring their bikes. He said on a lot of days, it's more traversed than the road that they have out there. So I do think it's a big draw. I know when my parents are big walkers, and they will say they will pick a beach community based on its sidewalks so that they know that they can walk in a community. So they very much can be tourism drivers.
And we've got good data that show that the trail really helps the property values adjacent to, right?
We do. We help fund a study of the effect of greenways. And one of the things that we found in that is the adjacent properties actually do increase in value when they're located near a greenway. So it is a property investment return to be on or near a greenway.
Win-win. So good. A couple of concerns in the area of pedestrian and bicycle, and one is the fatality rates. So, maybe it's because traffic volumes were up last year, pedestrian bicycle volumes, but whatever the reason, fatalities were up as well. So, any initiatives, any thoughts about what we do to reverse that, keep the volumes up, but get the fatalities headed back downward?
Absolutely. So we have long been a ranking that is very concerning. So while we're the 10th largest state in the nation, we are ranked 7th in terms of fatalities. So that's not the kind of ranking you want to see as a state. And so we have a number of different initiatives that we do around that. We have the Safe Routes to School program. So again, building out sidewalk networks that can get kids on their bikes to school safely and out of the road. We've got the Watch For Me initiative that we've continued to do for many years at the DOT, helping inform people, remind people that we're sharing the road and we need to look out for that. We have some research we've done with the HSRC, analyzing bike and pedestrian crash analyses, looking for what kind of features of a road do these crashes tend to happen on, and then how can we address them with our design. So we have, I go back to Complete Streets again, it really is about trying to create that safe space for all of the users of the facility to be in.
Yeah. So that's a concern, and then maybe ties in, I don't know, but I've been with DOT for 5 years, and doing this side of projects that I work in relatively early in the project development phase. And I've been surprised a lot of times that a project will get pretty far along in project development without much attention being paid to the future pedestrian and bicycle users. I think maybe, eventually we get caught up and get that attention in there, but any comment on that? Is that your observation as well? And what can we do about it?
I think it really comes back to the Complete Streets policy changes, that allows us at the beginning of a project to be thinking about what are the features that are in a plan somewhere from a local community, from an MPO, from an RPO. It bubbles up from the ground, the people who live in the community and know and understand the needs on that road. And then, again, making sure we're contextually appropriate, we're building those facilities. I think you're right. You got to get it in on the ground floor. That's the appropriate time and place to be doing it. So I really have a lot of hope and excitement about this updated policy.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think early is the right way to go. It's tough to get that get that freighter turned relatively late in the process when it's got some momentum there. So let's talk public transportation a little bit. My news feed every morning practically is full of stories about transit ridership being down in New York and DC and big cities across the US because of COVID for the last year. Has that been the North Carolina story as well?
So overall, yes. Trips have decreased an average of about 58% since the start of COVID. So that is generally the experience. That said, there are also outliers. One of my favorites is Jacksonville, North Carolina. So they went fare free, as many of our systems have done, because they wanted to reduce the touch points, the contact, with the exchange of money. And so with going fare free, they actually have seen an increase in ridership in COVID. And so, I think a lot of systems are starting to ask themselves, fare box recovery is such a very small piece of the pie of running public transit. Chapel Hill saw it many, many years ago when they went fare free, their ridership jumped enormously. So communities are thinking about how do we maybe remain fare free in the future and see our transit grow. Another example, and this is one of my favorites, is the city of Wilton. They were doing a fixed route system, the city of just under 50,000. And so fixed route systems in our smaller communities can be somewhat challenging. Your headway, to make the loop was about an hour. It didn't necessarily take people to where they needed to go. If you worked like in manufacturing, your fixed route system tends to run in your inner city and your manufacturing is not in your inner city. So they came to us and said, we'd like to try microtransit. And so we partnered with them to make sure they stayed FTA compliant and to seek a grant to help expand their service hours, which we were successful in. They took the exact money that they were using to run their fixed route, and they instead worked with the turnkey company that provided them vehicles and drivers. And now you get on an app on your phone and you ask transit to come and get you. If you are able to be mobile, it will create a virtual bus stop within, a block or so of your house. If you are not mobile, if you, have limiting factors that don't allow you to walk, you put that in and they will come get you at your door. It's like a Uber kind of system, right? So the car comes, you hop in, it takes you to where you need to go. It drops you off and it's subsidized just like the public transit was. So your fare, your $1.50 is exactly what you paid when you used to get on the bus. And what we see is when we reduce the friction in using transit, so we made it on your phone, we made it contactless, with your credit card. 7-minute wait times is what they're averaging. So we made it convenient. You don't have to call 24 to 48 hours in advance and book a trip. Well, what they're seeing is higher ridership in COVID than pre-COVID. Another one of these amazing stories, when we make transit easier, when we make it more at the level the customer expects, what we're seeing is there's all this underlying demand that wasn't being met.
Right.
We think this is really an interesting model going forward for our rural communities. Mm-hmm. What an incredible story it would be if we could actually serve more people cheaper, because the other thing they're seeing is it's cheaper to do it under this model. Right now in Wilson, our data is showing us it's about $10 a trip, and the average on demand in North Carolina is about $22 a trip. Mm-hmm. So I think we've really got to look at these new models and see, Joe, and according to the census, about 600,000 people in North Carolina do not have a vehicle in their home. And then if you think about how many maybe have a vehicle, but perhaps it's not reliable, or they have to share it with multiple adults in their home, the number is actually much greater. We think it's probably upwards of 1 million people. If you do not have access to job, the healthcare, the education, then you don't have access to economic means. And this is so important in North Carolina, in a state where over 50% of our population remains in a rural area. What are the opportunities they have if they can't get there? So we think this is a huge area of growth opportunity for the state.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's really impressive to increase ridership during this last year. It speaks well for the future. Couple of the big projects in transit, real brief mention, but the Raleigh BRT is one that I think we're almost ready for construction. Is that right?
So they're working on 4 corridors. The southern and northern routes are still in the planning phase. New Bern Avenue and Western Boulevard are in design. New Bern is the furthest along. And I think though Raleigh's in the lead and is looking to start construction next year. Our role is primarily on the highway side at the division level, to coordinate the construction activities, ensure the design is safe and meets standards, minimizes traffic disruptions. For our units, we're about capturing best practices and sharing that information with others in the state.
I got to tell you, I took a vacation last year, just before COVID hit, to Richmond, Virginia, mostly just to ride their BRT. And it was well worth the trip. I hope ours, hopefully it'll be better, but if it's somewhere in that range of service, it's going to be terrific.
Yeah, Richmond's doing a lot just ahead of us in the multimodal space, in BRT and rail. So when COVID is over, we're hoping to get up there and see how those systems have grown.
Yeah. My wife was a little less than thrilled with that vacation itinerary, but she tagged along. She's a good sport.
Funny you say that, Joe. I discovered when my kids were little, before I ever took this job, whenever we go on vacation, you're all about the modes, right? So we go to Chicago, they're like, let's ride the boat to see the architectural tour. Let's ride a taxi. Let's go on the subway, right? You discover that a lot of big city travel is all about modes of transportation. But now I become like the obnoxious mom. The last time we drove to Florida, 2 years ago, my kids, anytime they ask a question, Mommy, why are there so many trailers on this highway? Well, let's talk about that. I get excited. Let's talk about intermodal hubs, and let's talk about how freight moves and logistics. And now my kids are like, make her stop. No more talk about transportation.
Yeah, that can backfire.
Yep.
Chapel Hill BRT is also in design, coming along.
Yeah, I believe they're planning to start construction in 2024.
Good. And NCDOT has pretty much the same role in that one.
Yeah, and Joe, I'll share with you as well. I bet Joe Malazzo's out there right now going, she's got to talk about the FAST study. So I got to talk about the FAST study. We did partner with the RTA and the MPO and the transit system, all partnered to look at how we could accelerate BRT opportunities across the state. As folks are starting to get into them, we saw the opportunity to come together and think about how could we do it faster, what kind of standardization can we offer, those best practices. So we have a document that is either just gone up or about to go up on our website. You could Google DOT Integrated Mobility Division FAST study and read the whole study and the short briefs we have on it, where we're just trying to figure out, again, when there's something new, how do we push out information? How do we capture what could be some best practices and share them statewide? We see BRT probably starting to really ramp up in other communities across the state. So making sure everybody has a chance. Oh, see, there they are in the comment section. We got a link for you already. Seems awesome.
Joe Furstenberg and Joe Malazzo were pretty much simultaneous there with that link. They're quick on the draw, so good going. Good. Charlotte's Silver Line. It's a light rail, extensive 20 or 25 miles, I think, Gaston County through uptown and down into the southeast part of the city past Matthews in the, what do you say, early planning stages. Would that be fair?
Yeah, so they're in the pre-project development stage. I serve on the steering committee and got to tell you, they have a phenomenally impressive group of folks working on that project. Annie Mox, their project manager. I'm constantly impressed every steering committee meeting, the pace at which they're moving. After they finish their pre-project development stage, they'll move into the FTA pipeline. Right now, they're refining the alignment, so working through, each of the spaces, making sure that they've got the right design, the right alignment. They're doing their environmental analysis, and they'll progress the design after their Metropolitan Transit Commission adopts the alignment.
Any early notions about the price tag of the Silver Line?
I don't think I've seen one to date. The way that these are typically funded historically is 50% full funding grant agreement from the FTA, 25% from the state, and 25% from the locals. So I'm not sure exactly the price tag, but generally speaking, that's the model of how they wind up being funded.
Okay. And then one more of interest, again, particularly back in the triangle, is the commuter rail proposal. 30 miles or so, Durham through downtown Raleigh, down at least to Clayton, maybe it goes beyond that. Get an update on that one. How far along has that progressed?
Well, Go Triangle's doing such a great job leading that one. It's still being studied at this time. Once the study is complete, then they'll be able to focus in more on the total cost. Again, similar funding model to what we talked about in Charlotte. I think that east-west line is really exciting as it can be the backbone, of the start of a broader system in the area. So we are really proud. Our rail division is serving on the steering committee for that one, bringing that rail expertise that we have in-house to that group. It really takes incredible partnership in the triangle to do these kinds of projects because you cut across so many counties, so many cities. Excited to see where that study finishes up and gets to move to its next phase.
Who's the decision maker on, especially at the state level, of the funding for a project like the commuter rail?
So the STI, the Strategic Transportation Investment, is the law that guides how projects are selected. It's very data driven. It has multiple pots, projects that are division specific, things that are more regional, and then things that are more statewide. Something like commuter rail has, a number of additional specificities in the formula. So that combined with the General Assembly, it pre-STI, the General Assembly provided funding for the Charlotte Blue Line. That's how they did that 25%. Now we have the STI law. These are the various ways that you can go about putting together the funds for these projects. They really require a lot of layering of different funds.
Okay. Good. So I'm on record with a prediction that sometime maybe out in the 2040s or so, that automated vehicles will really, I think, take over our highways, especially in urban areas, especially in rich urban areas like Raleigh and Charlotte. And that most of us will choose, to have a subscription to an automated vehicle and either give up our own vehicle, our own auto, or give up our bus pass. That automated vehicles will draw from both of those pools of riders. Do you agree with that? Do you also see that kind of thing coming? That could be a pretty tough competition for transit system in general.
So I think it's really going to be a question of affordability, right? So, and equity. People who can afford new vehicles can already have automated features in their vehicles, and those who, are buying on the used market and older vehicles have none. So I think that, automation only further highlights the challenges we have in our current system with equity. Low income, disabled, and marginalized populations will not be able to afford the technology unless heavily subsidized. I think we have a lot to wrestle with in that space. And then, of course, we know that transit vehicles are also becoming automated, which will reduce transit operating costs and improve safety there as well. So that's why we're doing our CASI project. We brought our first automated transit vehicle to North Carolina. We called the program the CASI. And we have deployed her so far at the Transit Summit, Transportation Summit we did a few years ago. Then we did a deployment on the NC State Centennial Campus. And this spring, we're deploying her at the Wright Brothers Memorial. Because as you know, Joe, as we think about automation, we have to think about what does that mean for us at the DOT and how we build our current infrastructure. Since those investments have to last decades, we want to make sure we've thought through how automation can inform what we're doing today. And so I think there's always going to be a need for publicly subsidized transportation as long as we have low income and mobility challenged individuals. But the definition of public transportation will probably evolve.
Yeah, good. I'm buying that. Very good. Let me move on to a couple other modes. Our time is getting away here, but you have responsibility for air travel, and like transit, those numbers kind of tanked during COVID. What's your outlook? They're going to come back to pre-COVID levels, you think?
No, it's a great question. We're following, there's lots of national folks sort of projecting what they think. Initially, I think they were projecting maybe at the earliest we'd be back 2023, 2024, but now they're starting to watch as people are getting vaccinated, the rate at which people are buying up seats on planes. And I think they're seeing potentially a stronger return than they initially expected. So I think it's very much tied to the rate at which the vaccine rolls out and people start to feel comfortable getting out again. I will say that I am hearing from all kinds of people how they are itching to get back to travel. I myself, I would say I'm filling my passport, burning a hole in my back pocket. I like to travel and see the world. And so I myself have been on Google researching where we can go when we can go again. So I'd like to think that travel is going to come back in a strong way once we see a nice, strong vaccine rollout.
So we saw some at least postponements of airport construction projects during COVID. Do we maybe bring those back then if we see the passenger numbers rebound?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we did see some of the state funds that were provided to, for example, our commercial service airports, folks were going to use for construction, maybe put on debt service instead when, their revenue sources took such a hit. We've been really fortunate that Congress has done a lot of help to our airports to keep them going. So I do think once we get further down the pike and we see that travelers returning, then I think people will feel more confident about advancing construction projects again.
Yeah, good. Let's hope. So on rail, my perception, as looking from the outside is Raleigh to Charlotte continues to make progress as far as, removing crossings and protecting other crossings and gradually increasing speeds and safety on that important line. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working with our railroad partners for over 20 years to increase safety, capacity, reduce sections of slower track, all with an effort to improve freight and passenger operations and safety for motorists and pedestrians. Over the route, we've removed over 100 grade crossings. We built over a dozen bridges, constructed over 40 miles of second track. So It is the sealed corridor concept originated in North Carolina, and it's something that we continue to work on very strongly. You know, one of the most striking things that the rail division has ever shown me is our infrared cameras. We have posted in some of our more urban areas around track where you can see the outline, the heat of the individuals that are actually physically crossing live track. There's one where we watch a man set a baby down in live track so he can move his bicycle across so that he could go back and get the baby. It'll take your breath away. The more we can do to separate, you know, again, the mode, right? The track from the pedestrian, from the motorist, the safer it will be. So that's something we take a lot of pride in working on.
I've seen some of that footage and I just want to reach through the screen
Right.
and grab those people, and then don't do that.
We can't tell people enough that you will not hear that train coming.
Yeah.
That is private property, that it is not safe. Please do not go down there. Do not take pictures down there. It is, one time I did a high rail tour with my team. So we were in one of those trucks that has the ability to go down the track. And there was a gentleman walking ahead of us with his back to us. And it amazed me how close we had to get to him before he heard us. Mm-hmm. It can really blow your mind when you don't realize you're not going to hear that train come until it's too late. So we do a lot of safety messaging around, staying off the tracks.
Yeah. I'm really excited about Raleigh to Petersburg, the S line, I think it is. So, when can I buy my ticket?
So that is one of my favorite projects that I'm working on, because I think it can be so transformational for North Carolina. So what's, I think, unique that's happening right now is railroads are doing something called rationalizing their networks. So they're looking at where are their main lines, where are their stub ends, and saying, we don't need to own that track if it's not going to have growth in the future. And if you allow a railroad corridor to go away, you'll probably never get it back, right? It'll be piecemealed out, and reassembling a railroad corridor is a very difficult thing to do. So we have a program at the DOT where we preserve corridors. We own about 100 miles of track. And with the S line, we saw CSX, who currently owns it, looking at it as it's a stub end. So it goes to the corridor, missing track, goes from the Virginia line, missing track for about 9 miles, Ridgeway, and then from Ridgeway south to Raleigh, and Raleigh south to the South Carolina line, we have active track. But because it's a stub end, it's a dead end there, CSX only operates about 1 or 2 trains a day, a couple days a week. And so we actually pursued a federal grant through a program called CRISI to try and come up with the funds to acquire that line. We think a line in such a key corridor in North Carolina could really be grown. We think the freight opportunities could be grown on it. We think the passenger opportunities could be grown on it. And if we're right, and this is like our pilot opportunity about this, and we do it well, there are opportunities all across the state, in all parts of the state, of these underutilized tracks and corridors that we could bring back into use, because at their core, what they're about is connecting urban and rural economies. And those connections are what are going to help bring that prosperity to more parts of our state. So we are in talks with CSX. They're going very well. So I hope, we'll bring that acquisition to fruition soon. And then we'll be applying for further federal funding to start doing the preliminary engineering and then pursue grants for the construction. We already have the record of decision and the NEPA done. So that project is ready to go. I'd like to think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have something up and running. The great thing is we can do it incrementally, right? We've got our Charlotte Raleigh train, so we could just extend it to Wake Forest when we get that part done, and then, grow it further and further north as we build out that construction. So I think it's a primed and ready to go program that could really bear some fruit. I'll tell you, my favorite talking point on it is if you commute Wake Forest to Raleigh on Capitol Boulevard in normal times, I haven't driven it as of late, but in normal times, 40 minutes, sometimes an hour, on a train with a 79 mile an hour speed, you can do that in 20 minutes end to end. as a game changer when you can beat vehicle traffic that kind of time. We think the ridership will be really strong. So we'll start with an inner city play. We'll start with that inner city train that we run Charlotte to Raleigh, and we'll extend it up there. And then as the density grows, we can look at overlaying that commuter rail in the future.
Yeah, that density is really important, and we'll have that at both ends of at least Wake Forest to Raleigh. Yeah. About that time that we turn it over to Andy to informs me that there's some good questions that have come in from our participants. So, Andy, what you got?
All right, yeah, we've had some great questions, and if anybody has some questions that they haven't typed into the Q&A box, now is the time to do so. First question here, Sarah O'Brien brought up a really interesting question asking, has NCDOT also evaluated unintended consequences of increased congestion or air pollution and other possible negatives that could come from those Uber-like transit projects like the one you mentioned in Wilson?
Great question. We have not done that to date, but that is something we definitely need to be looking at and thinking about with microtransit. The good news is that our transit, individual vehicles have the opportunity to move to electric similar to buses. So both transit and vehicles can move in, whether you're using a small transit vehicle or a large transit vehicle. We're doing a lot to help advance the electrification of those fleets. So great opportunity there and great question for us to continue to look at and consider.
And Adam Fisher, one of our sponsors, Strategic Initiative Council. Adam, did you have also a question on microtransit?
Okay, I had to unmute myself. Sorry, can you hear me? Hey, Julie.
Yep.
You may have answered this, and I'm sorry. Just about the microtransit, and it'll be a little contrary to the one before, concerned about air quality, but just as a means to possibly contain cost of fixed route, maybe not just in the rural areas, but in the urban areas, like at night or extended urban area reach, the use of microtransit for that. And then even in Greensboro, while I was still there, we started an Uber type of service for paratransit that has become very popular with that group. And actually, you can provide better service on demand, where the users of that paratransit service can use it by themselves, reduce a lot of the complaints we're getting from the paratransit clientele, actually at a cheaper cost than we can provide the fixed, fixed route, but the van service where they have to share a ride.
That's a great point, Adam. It really is a model that can have incredible return both in urban spaces and in rural spaces.
Good. Andy, do you have more question?
Oh yeah, we've got a few more here. Next question was, with this increased focus on ped and bike, is there any sort of effort to work with the General Assembly to repeal or at least in some way modify the contributory negligence laws in North Carolina?
The last time I heard those words, they had something to do with the trial lawyers. I'm sorry, that's not my area of expertise. Sorry, y'all, I'm not a lawyer.
All righty. Next question we had here, and this was something that got mentioned, kind of offhand early on, but I think it's a very interesting question, considering the research that's going on. There's this growing tendency to use these, unmanned aircraft systems or drones for delivery services. Has NCDOT looked into that issue at all?
Yes, so we have one of the nation's leading drone programs at the DOT. We were one of 10 public agencies that were selected by the FAA a few years ago for what they called their IPP program. It was like a back door to the FAA where you could get permission to beyond the line of sight drone flights. We set up with our partners. One of the first most successful ones was at Wake Med, where we flew bloodborne pathogens and lab samples and such. from the main hospital to the lab. If anybody's ever driven over at Wake Med and like the New Bern Avenue area, that can be a very congested area. So rather than a car picking up these samples and driving them to the lab, they use a drone to move them. I can't remember exactly how many flights were done under the IPP by all 10 public agencies, but over half of them were at Wake Med. They were here in the state of North Carolina. So we are a national leader in that respect. And then we also have done pilot programs where we've done food delivery, we've done medical package delivery, and then we are using drones to further our infrastructure here at the DOT. Most recently, we used our drone program to go up and do some of the visual inspections of the Bass Night Bridge. While we will still do traditional inspections, the drone footage will enhance those inspection programs. If you Google that, you can see the video from that. It was pretty cool. And then like your signage over highways, your big signage over like a 440, we can use them to do visual inspections of those as well. So getting up there without shutting down a lane of traffic, safer for everyone. So we have a number of ways in which we are leading the nation in the deployment of the unmanned aircraft systems. We have a unit within our aviation division. The General Assembly was really generous and really wanted us to be in this space. So they gave us $2 million in non-recurring funds to stand up a UAS program. And we have really tried to position our state as a leader in innovation in this space, because we think this is a huge future play. And as a state, not only do we want to use the technology well, but we also want to make sure we can be a part of the manufacturing and the technology side long term, right? When this industry grows to what it's projected to, the winners will also not just be those who use them, but those who produce the technology that supports them and those who build the drones themselves. So making sure that we're well plugged in with the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina and helping support them as they recruit those kind of opportunities to North Carolina.
Very good. Andy, I think I want to call it there on the questions from the participants, but really appreciate that. Julie, before we go, got just a couple minutes. I don't want to forget ferries. The other mode that we haven't talked about them yet. I don't really have a question other than I rode the ferries again last week on a little weekend trip out east, and they're just fantastic. Let's keep them. Let's treasure them. They're really special.
Well, you know, Eastern North Carolina is such a special place. Tourism is such an important part of its economy. And of course, we're the only way, our ferries are the only way to get to Ocracoke. So, you know, come check out Ocracoke, come support Hyde County, ride our ferries. And then they shorten the distance of a drive in other parts of our state, from, you know, Currituck, Knott's Island at the north down to Southport, Fort Fisher in the south. I got to put in a plug. Our passenger ferry will be running again. This will be its third summer, Memorial to Labor Day. So if you get a chance to get out to the coast, please go and check out your ferries. Social media, let people know that they're there, because they are a really important part of Eastern North Carolina and our ability to travel efficiently in Eastern North Carolina.
Yeah, and they're fun, and my grandson just loved them. So yep, let's do.
Absolutely.
Julie, thanks so much. Appreciate it. As our second one here went just like the first one, that I've got still lots of questions and our time is up. So I think that's good. Really appreciate the information that you provided here, and all kinds of good stuff and all kinds of good modes. Keep it going. I don't know how you can keep all those things straight, but you seem to do that. So hope that continues for you, and wish you well as you try to keep it all together there.
Well, I have an amazing team. You know, the team has been doing this a long time. It's made up of incredible professionals, and so they make me look good, and I owe it to them. Thank you, Dr. Hummer, so much for thinking of the mode for this opportunity and allowing us to share what we're doing. You are such a well-respected leader and instructor and teacher and mentor, that I know how beloved you are in the transportation community. So thank you for letting us be a part of this.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. We're trying, and it's fun. It's what we do. So it is 1 o'clock. Let's draw to a close there. Thank our audience for joining us. We had a great turnout today. Andy will be sending out emails with the link to evaluation form and PDH certificate. So look for that. And we'll be back in May or so with the 3rd installment of Conversation in Transportation. So look for us to make an announcement on that very soon. Thanks a lot, Andy, unless there's something else I have missed.
Nope, that's it.
With thanks to Andy, thanks to Adam and Christina for being our sponsors from Nick Site. And I am Joe Hummer saying good afternoon, and we'll see you next time.